today's Pastor Appreciation Day, and we're just going to honor our pastors of the house this morning. First service, Pastor Jose was very shocked. To say the least, he had no idea that he was going to not preach today because he was ready to preach a new sermon. He's still ready to preach. But we pulled a fast one on him. We were like, we're doing something different just to celebrate and honor them for who they are in each and every one of our lives. So to help me do that, I have some leaders. If my leaders can come on up. And we're just going to talk about our pastors for a little bit. So if you guys can just introduce yourselves, that would be great.
Hi, everybody. I'm Hasina, the worship leader.
Good morning, everyone. I'm Doris, and I do outreach team.
Hello, everybody. I'm head of security, Ray Lopez.
And he's still secure in the spot. He still got his earpiece in, okay? He's still making sure we're good and secure. But these are just some of the leaders here at the church. Thank you guys for joining me today. Are you guys ready? Yeah? Okay, let's get started. So my first question is for Miss Doris. What specific moment or teaching from the pastors has made a lasting impact on your spiritual journey?
Wow, I can't really pick one, if I could be honest, because I think everything that's taught here has spoken to my spiritual journey. From the very, very beginning. So this is a Bible-based church. Our pastors preach strictly on the Bible, and every day that you come here has spoken to me in some way, form, or fashion. It's something that I can apply to my life. And so there's not one specific moment. I think one of the biggest ones early on, I think, was when pastor taught us about how, we're forgiven. Right? We don't have to keep begging to be forgiven or sorry, I'm a sinner, right? Because I was raised in a Pentecostal church, and nothing you ever did was right? You always had to beg for forgiveness, and I strayed away from the church because of that. And coming back and learning that, we can mess up sometimes or we fall down, but we can get back up because nothing can separate us from the love of God. So that was big.
That is right. Don't we love that we don't have to keep begging God and be like, God, can you forgive me today? Can you forgive me today? When we wake up, we don't have to be like, God, I'm going to drop the ball today, so please forgive me now. Like, we know that he's going to love us no matter what. We just got to get back up and be like, okay, we're going to realign ourselves back with what the word says, and that this is a Bible-based church. And it is taught from the word of God itself. It's not pastor's opinion. It's not our opinion. It's God's opinion and God's opinion alone, right? That's good. Miss Hasina, can you share an example of how the pastors have personally supported you through a challenging time?
Well, I will definitely have to say in the past 2 years, I was going through some challenges with my sons, and I didn't think that I would be able to get through it, and I really appreciate the fact that you picked up the phone and you reached out and you said, how can I serve you? And I want to pray with you, and I want to stand with you, and I want to remind you of the word of God and what it exactly means for your children. Because a lot of times, we feel like, fine, the enemy, you can mess with me. But when you mess with my child, it's like sometimes, that'll shake you a little bit. It'll shake your faith a little bit, But knowing that I had my pastors who were praying for me, praying for my family, really means a lot to know that they're not just somewhere off or telling someone else to call or to do it, but they're picking up the phone because they care.
And yeah, absolutely. That's something that we do see often with our pastors. They want to know what's going on with you guys. They aren't just worried about filling another seat here. They're not worried about the numbers. They're worried about how you are doing as a person. They genuinely care for who you are and what you're going through, and they want to help you pray through that, because you're not going to stay there. They're going to help you get through it, right? So, Ray, how have the pastors inspired you to step out of your comfort zone?
See, I had to get that one.
I know what questions to ask people, right?
Yeah. So I'll warn you, when I talk about God and I talk about these two people, I cry.
Where's the tissues? Where's the tissues?
I love them so much. For me, they always see something in me that I don't see. They are always behind me, and they really don't give me an option. They have taught me not to say no. They've taught me that. I honor them. I will never say no to them. So if they need me to step up, I step up. And then I shock myself because I do it. I mean, what can I say? I mean, I do it. And I just love them, and I thank them.
Yeah. Our pastors definitely have a way of pushing us out of our comfort zones. He'll probably share later, but even during the first two services, Pastor said to me too, I'm going to pull you out. And I was like, oh gosh, do it afraid, right? Yep. So I'm going to do it afraid. Yep. But Doris, for you too, they've kind of helped you get out of your comfort zone as well. Do you want to share a little bit?
A whole lot. Yeah, I definitely wouldn't be here. I wouldn't do the things I do in church. But they see the best in me. They believe in me more than I believe in myself a lot of the times. And they challenge me. They're going to call me to task, and they're going to say, no, you're a child of God, and this is, stop limiting your belief is something big that Pastor Nett says. So they definitely push me outside my comfort zone, which I appreciate.
I just remembered something last week. I'm at the door, right? You know what I'm going to talk about. I'm at the door, and Pastor comes over here. Hey, Ray, I got to go upstairs. If I don't make it back, I'm going to give you my notes. You go and preach. I'm looking at him like, what? I'm like, no way. But then he's like, are you okay with that? And just stares at me. And I'm like, yeah. Yeah. And he leaves, and he just leaves me like that. And I'm talking to Fred, my lead in security, and I'm like, Fred, I think he wants me to preach. And he's like, oh, you're going to have to go. I'm like, I know, I got to go. I would have never said no to him. Never.
Oh, well, Pastor, now he's ready. He's ready.
No.
Oh, man. See, that is good. In what ways has the pastor's leadership shaped your perspective on serving others?
Wow. One of the messages that Pastor preached is called Your Yes Matters. Mm-hmm. That message changed me. I think that was in December of 2023 or something like that. But I listened to that message a lot because when I first came here, my yes was a matter of my convenience. And that message, you said that if your yes is convenient to your schedule and whether or not you got vacation plans on this weekend or this and that, then you're saying no to God. And I was like, whoa. I don't want to do that. And then you also talked about how that means that you're not fitting in with the plan, the true plan that God has for you, and you're not even a part of the kingdom. And I was like, well, I don't want to do that. So I learned that the more that you separate yourself and what it is that you want to do and put other people ahead, that God honors that, because in doing that, you're honoring God. And everything else, all the desires of your heart, all the things that you want, God honors you in such a way that he gives you the things you've been chasing when all along he wanted you to chase him. So I learned that my service to God, I serve the one to reach the one that he wants me to reach. And in doing that, I grow and he honors that.
That, I know. She's preaching right now. You got a whole bunch of preachers up here already. You could go on sabbatical. No, you cannot go on sabbatical again. But it's so true. Like, we're just serving one God. We're not serving people just to serve people. We're serving God to serve people. And I like what you said, in my convenience. God is not going to work around your schedule. He's going to work around his schedule and his schedule alone. So even if you're ready or not, you got to say yes to God, because he's like, this is the time is now. We're going to do it now. All right. Doris, what qualities of the pastor's leadership do you admire the most?
All of them. They have such wonderful qualities. I think the most what I love and appreciate about you guys is that you love tirelessly. You commit and you give your all and you expect excellence. We operate at a level of excellence here because of your leadership, because of your love and your passion. And you guys always say, people aren't going to know God unless they see the God in you, but you're those examples for us. And we're really big in our family on lead by example, but you guys definitely exemplify that in every form of the word. So that's what I love. Your boldness, your fire, your passion, you're just constantly going and wanting to do better, and not just for yourselves. It's always for everybody else. It's always you give of yourself all the time to everybody else, and I think that's what I admire the most about you guys.
Yeah, our pastors are very, very giving of their time, their resources. They want to equip you for what God has called you to do in your life. They don't want to take any gain from it. They just want to see you grow and you be successful as the person that God created you to be. Ray, how have you seen the pastors demonstrate radical faith?
Oh, in so many different ways. I think, like, when they went on vacation right now, that was radical faith. I mean, they left the whole church to us. You know?
That was radical faith.
That was pretty. I mean, I don't know about you guys, but I was like, they're leaving? Like, who am I gonna ask?
I said, Pastor Net must be going bonkers.
Yep. In so many things. Like, we've been with them most of the whole time, and we watched, from the hotel till now, and they always just constantly stepping out in faith, and they're just an inspiration. And they make us step out. My family have been so blessed. I can't even express so many blessings, and it's just the way they taught us, just to step out. That actually, when I step out, it's always hard to take that first step, but once I do, I just let it go. Yeah. And it's really all it is, just letting it go. And they taught me that, and I can't explain, like, all the blessings they've watched. We had second guesses about buying a house, and they're like, you could go and buy it. And I'm the one, my wife, she took the step, and we just went. Mm-hmm. And now we got a beautiful home. I can't, the tithing, that was a real hard thing. I come from a Catholic background. It was a hard thing to do, the tithing. But I took a step out, and I have not missed a beat. I have not missed anything. And we do above and beyond our 10%, and I love it. They're just amazing people, and I thank them. Yeah.
When you step out in faith, God blesses you big because of it. Because at that moment, God is working. We're not working. He's working. He's like, ooh, okay, now I'm going to give you what that desire of your heart is and what you're looking forward to, because you took that step out and you're trusting in me, right?
Yep.
Doris, how has the vision and guidance of the pastors transformed the church community as a whole?
I think it's clear. I think people you walk in here and you feel it. You feel the love, you feel the energy, and it's instilled by our pastors. they just, can you react?
Yeah. How's the vision of the house transform the church community as a whole?
Oh, because I think we're a church, and I think it's definitely because of their leadership. Everybody always volunteers to do stuff. We never lack. We give, this church it does in the community through excellence. We serve in excellence, and it's their leadership. It's their leadership that drives this church, that guides us, that makes us want, and people want to come here. Even I work at the high school. We go in the community, and when they're like, oh, you go to that church. Oh, and you're from that church on Broadway. Oh, and you're pastors, and can you ask? And they'll ask questions about the church. So it's definitely their leadership.
It's a big impact in this community. Can you guys agree? The people, they know who Church at the Bridge is, and they look forward to the stuff that we do, but that's because we do it in love and in service to others.
And they kind of flip the script. You know, if you think about it, I've been in Newburgh most of my life, and like I know how the churches work. You know, they have pantries, they have things or thing. We kind of flipped it. You know, we don't just give food. We love on everybody that comes through these doors. And it's with God, you know, it's with a passion that we just want to give. We want people to know that we care about them, and we want them to know God. Yeah. It's important. Yeah. It's important, and I appreciate it.
Yeah, we say we're not only feeding your belly, we're feeding your souls, right?
Yep.
That's what we're called to do. We're called to feed the souls. So, Miss Hasina, my last question is, can you share a story that highlights how the pastors have empowered you to lead in radical ways?
You're coming at me with the stories, Karina. I'm a thug. You know, trying to have me cry on camera and stuff. So, I remember when Pastor Jose had called me into a meeting, him and Pastor Annette, because they wanted me to take over leading worship. And as I said before, I wanted my yes to be about my convenience. And I knew that there was a cost that I had to pay because I didn't want to dishonor God by being on a platform when I knew that there were things that I wasn't ready to lay aside. So when I came in and Pastor Jose was like, you know, there's a need and, you know, all this, and I was like, well, Pastor, I want to do outreach, and, you know, that's not where my heart is, you know, and I was just doing
Look at her now.
Yeah. And I was like, you know, so that's not what I want to do. So Pastor Jose, you know, he does that look like, And then, and you know, Pastor Annette, she was, okay, because she had that, you know, I'm going to go pray about it. It's like, oh, no. Oh, Lord, she's going to pray. So she was like, okay. And Pastor Jose was like, but, yeah. She was like, no, she said no. I was like, oh. Right? So, back to the question that you asked, which was what?
Sorry. How have the pastors empowered you to serve in radical ways?
Yes. So I appreciate both of the responses because God was beginning a work in me in that moment. And God was showing me myself. And when I first came here, like, I thought I was gonna just coast. Like, I was gonna do a little here, do a little there, but I knew I was being called to something greater. I just didn't. There is a cost that you have to pay. But what I didn't realize that was laying aside what I wanted to do and what I felt was the right plan was really going to open the door for everything else to be easy, right? Yep. God said, take my yoke upon you, right? Because it's light, but I didn't think that it was light. I thought it was going to be heavy. Like, oh, I got to carry this. It's going to be heavy. If I step up, it's going to be heavy because I got to do this and I got to do this and I got to do that. But when I surrendered to God's plan, it was light. And the peace of God that surpasses all understanding guided me to a level that has been beyond my wildest dreams. So thank y'all for that so much.
I don't have anything to say. She said it all. But just from us here, like, just if you see and hear our stories, get to know every one of us more, we could share you a lot about how the pastors are radical. But thank you guys so much for joining me. I'm going to have Joshua come up. He's going to be preaching a word about our pastors.
Thank you. Well, good afternoon, everybody. How are we doing today? Good. So before I even get into the sermon that I prepared today, I just want to highlight something that, you guys have most of you have only been here this third service, but it's a trend that everybody who came up, our leaders, have shared, where Pastor Jose and Pastor Annette have inspired them to step out of their comfort zone, have inspired them to grow in their faith and in a lot of different ways. But one of the things that I hope you know is when they leave here, they are praying for you. And what I mean by that is not just praying for your well-being, but they are asking God about you. They are taking care and thoughtful prayer about, I see something in this person. Lord, show me what it is. Because understand this, they're not looking for leaders to build church at the bridge. We're looking for leaders to build the body of Christ. So out of all the leaders that we've had today, they all have specific gifts and talents, and they are using those gifts well to serve God. And in this house, we benefit from it because they desire to do these things. They have a heart for it. It's something that they've already been doing, and it just came to a point where it was time for them to step up. And it wasn't something that Pastor Jose or Pastor Annette had to teach them to do. They already knew it. But Pastor Jose and Pastor Annette prayed about it, received direction from the Holy Spirit on how to approach this individual, Lord, what is it that's stopping them? And how can I be a vessel to open that opportunity for them and show them what they don't see? So it's funny that everybody today that has come through has all shared the same thing. Pastor Jose and Pastor Annette have opened my eyes to something I didn't see in myself. And as radical pastors, which is what we're going to be talking about today, it's something that it's because they care and they love every single one of us. So understand this. We all have gifts and talents. Each and every single one of us has a plan and a purpose ordained and designed by God. And the only way for you to start living it is to say yes. And as we go through today's sermon, I want you to not just hear how we're honoring Pastor Jose and Pastor Annette, because like I've said both services, we're not honoring the creation. This is just a result of the Creator. And yes, we have Pastor Jose and Pastor Annette in front of us that we are honoring them because of the position and title that they are in, but ultimately, I want you guys to understand that this is a result of the work that God did. Amen. These are just faithful stewards that said yes, as a light and as an example for us to pursue for ourselves. Amen. Yes, you can give it up for them. Yeah, go ahead. So, radical pastors. Pastor Jose had a sermon series that he was going to start today, but we're going to finish out the radical series, honoring them, but also getting some direction and insight for ourselves as well. I mean, the very idea of starting a church, little c, the very idea of starting a church is radical for a lot of people. That is not something that is common. That is not something that everybody here has thought about. I'm sure some of us may have, possibly, I don't know, but not everybody in here. That is something that is a specific calling that has been placed on your life by God. Even becoming a pastor, in any fashion, becoming a pastor is something that a lot of people would consider radical. And in that, we see through the testimony of Pastor and Pastor Annette, who I am fortunate enough to call my parents, we see through their steps of faith to faith, from glory to glory, the daily exercise and sacrifices and things that they have done. We are all sitting here in the fruit that's been harvested from that. And a lot of what we're honoring today is the seeds that were planted in them, that were watered by others, that now they plant those seeds in other places and water as well. So understand this, that in this journey of faith that they have undergone to become pastors, this wasn't just like a light switch. This wasn't something that one day the light switch flipped on and that was it. They were full-time pastors. This was a journey that has come over 20 years. Now, obviously, and we're going to read in Jeremiah, God knew us before we were born. He always had a plan and a purpose for us. He knows the outcome. He is the author and finisher of our faith. So, yes, this was always the plan, but Pastor Jose and Pastor Annette didn't always know what the plan was. They were not always living as pastors. And like I said, the first two services, we're not going into the past prior to that because that's in the grave. That's dead. We don't need that anymore. We are focusing on a past from when they said yes, that now brings us all together here and we get to honor the servants of the Lord, right? So in Jeremiah chapter 1, verse 5, like I mentioned before I formed you in the womb, I knew you. Before you were born, I set you apart. I appointed you as a prophet to the nations. So, yes, God knows the plans he has for us all before we were even created, but we do not find out until we devote ourselves to become his disciple. Now, what a disciple means is a student, somebody who is devoting their life to the learning and teaching of a specific subject. And when we see the calling that God has placed on Pastor Jose and Pastor Annette, I mean, when we read it, Jeremiah was to become a prophet. They were designed to become pastoral leaders in the body of Christ. But like I said before, they had to discover what that meant. And from the beginning, they may not have been able to see the outcome that we have today. But just off of their yes, God was able to use that and to multiply. Which leads me to my first point. We won't know until we submit ourselves to be a disciple of Christ. Now, over 20 years ago, I remember a very specific night. So specific, I don't remember the date and time. All I know is it was at night. And I was under 10 years old. And I remember we were living in the city. And I want you to imagine, like, when you walk out today, the firehouse over to the left, that was basically like if the church is where we lived, the firehouse was the church that we were going to. That's how close we were. And one night, it's late. I'm supposed to be asleep. And my room is like right next to the living room at the front of the house. And all of a sudden, we hear somebody yelling, Jose, Annette, Jose, yelling out the window at night. So they open up the window. Me and Karina come in, and it's the teens from the church. And now, like, they're confused because we didn't expect them. They weren't youth pastors. They weren't even teen leaders. They were just people that were devoted to helping out the church. Like I was saying in the other services, I remember, like, after school, my mom, Pastor Annette, me and my sister would follow her into the church, and she would help them with the financial accounting because that's what she did professionally. So she would help the church manage their finances and do the QuickBooks or whatever they had back then. I'm sure it was QuickBooks. Was it? Okay. I don't even know. All I know is she was they needed the help. Pastor Jose, being a leader who wasn't the pastor at the time, he was just somebody that, hey, the church needs help, I'm there. Like Ray was saying, he couldn't say no. The pastor called on Pastor Jose, and he said, okay, what do you need me to do? Open and close the church. I mean, yeah, we live right down the block. So, yeah, we opened the church, we closed the church, all that stuff. So the teens, I guess we're having a teen night, and something happened. I don't know. I don't remember. But all of a sudden, they ended up coming to the house. So then Pastor Zay and Pastor Nett, they let them upstairs. There's like 10 of them in the room, and it was a late night. And from that moment, I remember it being pivotal because this opened the opportunity for a yes to occur. Because there was a need in a church for new youth leaders, and Pastor Jose and Pastor Annette fulfilled that need. They didn't just fulfill the need. That youth group ended up multiplying in such a way that there was more youth in that church than there were adults in the congregation. That youth group specifically went out and evangelized, meaning they went out into the streets in the Bronx, all over, preaching how good God is. We did skits, we did performances, just so much life-changing things happen, and a lot of them are still devoted to the Lord today. I mean, especially the ones you guys are in contact with. Like, the testimony of faith that started from that night, which was like a random night, that ended up leading to all this. And it goes back to this faith by faith, glory by glory, because I remember a time where they were transitioning from they did their time, they served faithfully, and they felt a calling somewhere else. But before we even get into that, it reminds me of how like the disciples encountered Jesus, right? Because to the disciples, it was random. Like Peter, he was fishing all night long. Fishing all night. One morning, Jesus shows up, he's preaching the word, and then Jesus tells him to cast his nets, and he's like, well, listen, after listening to him preach, he was like, I've been doing this all night, but according to what you say, I'll do it. And because of his faithfulness, like what Ray was talking about, because he was faithful and stepped out, God blessed him. Peter casts his nets. What happens? They catch so much fish, they need 2 boats to bring it in, and the 2 boats are barely doing it. That's the overflow from your yes that God then can use to pour into you. And that's found, just for your reference, in Luke chapter 5. And because of that, Peter left everything behind to become a disciple. His brother Andrew, who was with him in that moment, also left everything behind to follow Jesus. And then we see James and his brother John, who were also fishing, that left everything to follow Jesus. They left their dad in the boat with some hired help just to go follow Jesus. And that's in Mark chapter 1. Levi, a tax collector, left his profession behind to follow Jesus. So when we understand that that transition is not random, it is a designated moment that God is appointed and saying, now is your chance to say yes. And I remember that transition from them being just youth leaders in the church to then becoming full-time youth pastors, leaving full-time paying jobs in the world, really, and becoming devoted to every day it's about the church, which their life was already before, but there's a big difference between going to work and going to church than going to work at the church. Very big differences. The benefits, the pay, everything is not the same. It requires some faith. It is radical. But I can imagine the amount of conversations that took place during those times. I mean, I was just a kid, especially when they became youth pastors. I was in high school. In my mind, it was just how I grew up. It's just what they did. I now as an adult, I can think back like, wow, that was kind of crazy, like how everything took place. It was really radical how we just transitioned from living in the city to being up here, and they were still working. My dad was still working in the city, and my mom was working up here to be closer to us, and we were just doing all this stuff at the church. They were volunteering, they were committed, they were serving, and then came a time where it was time to step up again. And they said yes. And because of that, that youth group multiplied. Kids' lives changed. Parents' lives changed because of the work that they were doing with the kids. They were planting seeds in the kids that ended up going to the adults, and there was such a big impact, and it's all because of their stewardship and their honoring and their excellence of people. Their caring and love for people that God has placed on the inside of them. And it leads me to Proverbs 3, verses 5 through 6, where it says, "Trust in the Lord with all your heart, and lean not on your own understanding. In all your ways submit to him, and he will make your paths straight." See, I'm thinking about all these times where we went through a lot of transitions, and it's God has blessed not just this family, but the families that we have grown up with together. People that are in this house today that have been here from the very beginning, who have even been here before there was a beginning, right? And it's just how the seeds were planted, they were watered, and then they multiplied. And how we are all benefiting today from the strength that God has placed on the inside of us, right? Which leads me to the second point. It is in his strength that we strive. In Colossians chapter 1, verse 9 through 12, "For this reason, since the day we heard about you, we have not stopped praying for you. We continually ask God to fill you up with the knowledge of his will through all the wisdom and understanding that his Spirit gives, so that you may live a life worthy of the Lord and please him in every way, bearing fruit in every good work, growing in the knowledge of God, being strengthened with all power according to his glorious might, so that you may have great endurance and patience, and giving joyful thanks to the Father who has qualified you to share in the inheritance of his holy people in the kingdom of light." So now this strength that God has placed on the inside of us, I mean, I remember New Year's 2013. I had just graduated. I went through my first semester in college. And it's New Year's, and Pastor Zay and Pastor Nett, they sit my sister and I down at the kitchen island. And we're sitting in the house, and my parents are like, "Okay, we got some news for you." And they said, "We are no longer working at the church." And me and Karina were like, "What? Like, what happened?" Like, it's kind of a shock. Like, didn't really expect it. And he says, "We are opening our own church." And then I remember Pastor Jose saying, "What did we just do?" Because he had a moment where he realized there's no safety net. There's no job. It's do or die, sink or swim. We stepped in faith. Now it's time to actually live it. But even through that, they never took their eyes off of God. They never took their eyes off of Jesus. It's that earthly net that we think is what sustains us and comforts us that all of a sudden was cut off. And I didn't say this the first two services, and it just popped up because we haven't said it in a while. And, hold on, I can't cry. My dad used to say all the time, you don't know what faith is until faith is all you got. And, yeah. Yeah. The reason why I'm trying not to cry is because, like, in my own life right now, I'm living that, and I don't want to get into that, but it's like, it just hit me. That's good. Ooh. You don't know what faith is until faith is all you got. I'm good. I don't need a napkin. I got it. I held it together. So, like I said, Karina and I were in college. Pastor Jose's having this moment of like, what did I just do? Realizing the weight of the world. I got tuitions, I got a mortgage, I got cars, we have bills. And yet, even through all that, lights never went out. House never foreclosed, lights stayed on, food always on the table, right? Like, and I know it must have not been easy, but God provided every step of the way. And it was one of those things that, like, as a kid, you don't really have much appreciation for it, but looking back and how far we've come from having a service in our house for the very first time, not really expecting anybody to come, like, hey, if they come, great, but if not, it's going to be us four, and we're going to have this service together. But we had people that showed up, like the Romeos and the Espinalas. They showed up the very first service in our house, and from there, it was, okay, how do we keep this going? Then it went from faith to faith. We went from being in our house, all of a sudden, we started having like 20 people show up in the townhouse in New Windsor, and it was like, okay, getting a little tight. They're using my bedroom for the kids, and Karina's trying to teach them, and like we're using the TV as our projector and stuff, and it's like, okay, we can't really do this anymore. And then an opportunity opens up at the hotel, right up the road. I mean, it's not right up the road, but if you just continue straight, go straight up, you'll get there eventually on the right. And that opened up to now where they were getting us a room every week. And I remember Pastor Jose and we didn't even have a sound system. And he ended up having a relationship with somebody who had him. Like, yeah, on the weekends you could use it. So then he would go wake up early. I don't know how early. I would wake up like an hour or two after because I had to go help him set it all up, right? Set up the speaker, set up the sub, wire everything, hook up the projector. And we did that faithfully for 6 months. And then all of a sudden an opportunity opened up where it's like, all right, we maxed out the first hotel room they gave us. So then they gave us a conference room, and we were using another room for kids. And then we ended up outgrowing that space. And the hotel's like, I don't know what we're going to do with y'all because y'all taking it all over. And then all of a sudden an opportunity opens up here in the city of Newburgh. And look where we are today. We own the building. We own the building. 10 years later. It is truly a blessing. And I mean, not giving Pastor Jose and Pastor Ned all the credit, because obviously God is the major component. Without him, none of this is possible. But God provided every need, every desire, every season. There was never a lack. But it was because of their faithfulness to the vision that got us here today. And it's why a lot of us are inspired and honored to call them pastors, right? And I remember early on during the church running, Pastor Jose got a call from a family member. And this family member, when he called, was like, dude, are you crazy? Both of you left full-time paying jobs to start a church with no guarantee of money, no guarantee of anything. Like, you got college, you got tuition, you got house, you got more, you got all this stuff. And Pastor Jose had to very lovingly hang up the phone. Like, straight up, like, actually hung up the phone. And then he calls him back. He was just like, I can't take in that doubt. I can't make any room for that. There's no room in this faith. Remember, you don't know what faith is till faith is all you got. And if you get doubt mixed in with that, it don't work. You can't serve two masters. You can't focus on faith and this life that God has for you and still looking at the world and what you think it has for you. You got to pick one or the other. And I remember that time where in our family, it was like, I just showed up, really. Whatever we needed, my sister and I showed up. Jeff showed up. Xiomara showed up. Sandra showed up. And then Ray and Doris started showing up. And then other people started showing up. And it just built and compounded on the people who had a heart to serve to now look at us today. 3 services of people devoted and loving God, and then we are getting people who want to get to know it. Fire starters that now all of a sudden look at the blaze that we got going. The passion, the drive. In Mark chapter 3, verse 20 through 21, then Jesus entered a house, and again a crowd gathered so that he and his disciples were not even able to eat. When his family heard about this, they went to take charge of him, for they said, he is out of his mind. Jesus' family, after Jesus started his ministry and heard him saying that he is the Son of God, his family said, he is out of his mind. And that leads me to my last point. Having vision will make you radical. Having a vision, go ahead. Having vision means that you are seeing something that no one else sees. Having vision isn't your ability to see right now. It is able to see in the spirit, able to see what God has called you to. It is the ability to see what is to come. Which leads me to the last verse we're going to read today, Habakkuk 2, verse 2 through 3. And the Lord answered me, write the vision, make it plain on tablets, so he may run who reads it. For still the vision awaits its appointed time. It hastens to the end, and it will not lie. If it seems slow, wait for it. It will surely come. It will not delay. So today we are seeing the fruits of the vision that was planted in Pastor Jose and Pastor Annette. Those who serve and those who have had any length of time to get to know them have seen what their vision is able to do, because then their vision becomes available for you to see. It's why the vision of this church is to connect with God, connect with people, and to connect with this community. Because that vision within itself is just a 3-part process, and it sounds easy. And that's why we plan the events, and that's why we plan the things that we do and volunteer and serve, because that is how we actually achieve it. Going back to Habakkuk 2, this vision is written plainly. It's not meant to be deep and go over your head. The mission is to love God and to love people. And the only way for us to do that is to commit to the yes and to actually serve those who need it. And get this, everybody who doesn't know God, they need it. The rich or poor, whether they live in the city of Newburgh or they live outside of Orange County or they live outside of New York, the world needs it. And we are all here today with a plan and purpose that God has predestined for you, but it's time for you to say yes. And for those of you who have already said yes, it is time to write the vision. For those of you who have already wrote the vision and are living in the vision, it's time to look ahead. The vision doesn't end. The work that God has started in us is not complete until the day of Jesus Christ, which means either we go see him or he's coming to see us. So until then, we got a lot of work to do, because there are billions of people in this world that don't know him. And those of us in this house are charged with the responsibility. You can't say you didn't hear the mission because you're here today listening. The mission is to go out into this world and to make disciples, to show them the love of God and to teach them the good news that has been given to us.
Hey everybody, thank you so much for joining us here at Church at the Bridge today. I pray that you had a personal encounter with God, that he spoke to you powerfully, and that he met you at your place of need with this message. I also want to encourage you to go ahead and subscribe to our YouTube page. By doing so, you'll be able to check out past messages, past events that we've done. You'll also be able to see what's happening now and those things that are to come. And lastly, I'd like to invite you to join with us in all that God is doing with your giving. Feel free to do so on our website. Again, thank you again for joining us, and I can't wait to connect with you next week.